Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, tigers, sloth bears, sambar, and more on our India Tiger Photo Expedition, presented by Nat Hab Expedition Leader Aditya Panda. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Take it away, Aditya.
Thank you, Rob. Hi, everyone. It's been a long time. I hope you've all been doing well and enjoying our webinars or traveling on our expeditions. Now, I know a lot of you have waited a long time for this webinar. I was supposed to present it on the 30th of April, and of course, I couldn't due to certain reasons. And here I am presenting it today, almost a day over a month later. In the meantime, I've been on two other expeditions to Ranthambore, which is where today's webinar is based on. I've been on two India Tiger Quests expeditions in the meantime, and there is one more before we wrap the season up. So I am really excited to present what surmised on our India Tiger photo expedition. But before that, I would like to introduce myself to those of you who are watching one of my webinars for the first time, and to those of you who haven't had a chance to travel with me in the past. My name is Aditya Panda, and I have been guiding Nat Hab expeditions in India since 2016. I primarily guide the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, the India Tiger Quest, and of course, the trip that we are going to be talking of today, the India Tiger Photo Expedition. When I'm not guiding Nat Hab expeditions, I'm based in Eastern India in a state called Odisha, where, which is my home state, and where I have been working for the conservation of tiger and elephant landscapes for most of my adult life. Now, over to today's webinar topic. Well, today's webinar is based, as we know, on the India Tiger Photo Expedition, which was earlier called the India Tiger Photo Pro Expedition. Now, most of you must be aware that Nat Hab has done away with the distinction between photo expeditions and photo pro expeditions. Now, all photography-focused expeditions shall be uniformly called photo expedition and shall be uniformly treated as what photo pro expeditions used to be treated as in the past. Now, to talk to you about the Tiger Photo Expedition, well, it is an expedition that it's an itinerary that started last year. I believe we did at least one the year before. So yeah, it's let's say it started in 2022. So it's a fairly recent new itinerary. It is built upon our existing India Tiger Quest expedition, which has been really popular for many, many years. And of course, most of you must have heard me speaking on that in the past. What the photo expedition does is that it extends the India Tiger Quest expedition. And instead of 6 days, the expedition is now 10 days. And instead of 7 game drives, we now get to go on 11 game drives at the really popular Ranthambore National Park and Tiger Reserve. Ranthambore happens to be the hottest and driest tiger habitat in the world. And we go there in the hottest and driest time of the year. So this expedition runs from April through June. The reason why we go there at this time of the year is because, in the dry and hot summer months, water is limited and vegetation is really sparse. What that does is that enables excellent tiger sightings for us. It also localizes most of the wildlife in that reserve around the few water bodies that dot it. So it is easier to come across megafauna it is easier to come across all fauna. In fact, every little puddle of water becomes a hotspot for wildlife activity, from birds to large mammals. And tigers dislike the heat. They like to rest a lot, and unlike most cats, tigers love water. So in the hot months, tigers will find a nice pool of water, or a stream or a river, and as the day begins to heat up, they will lie up in the shade near it, and every now and then they will go and sit in the water with their bellies submerged, just to keep cool. And that makes it a lot easier for us to find tigers at this time of the year. As a result, we can almost assure you high quality tiger sightings and lots of tiger sightings. And whenever we find tigers at this time of the year, we tend to watch them or have them with us for extended periods of time, enabling excellent photographic opportunities. Now, this trip, as I said, is 10 days long, has 11 game drives, and as with our India Tiger Quest trip, it is limited to only 6 guests, and we put our guests in 3 jeeps, which means that there are no more than 2 guests per jeep at any point of time. Now, what that does is that it allows our guests to have a seat to themselves and plenty of room for all their photographic gear, all their camera bags and camera equipment, and the freedom to turn around and shoot from any side and any angle without any hindrance. That was a short description of this trip. Of course, besides Ranthambore National Park and Tiger Reserve, which is our primary destination on this trip, we also add a visit to a city called Jaipur, where we get to do some architectural and street photography, and get some pictures showcasing life and culture in India. And we also go to a reserve right in the city practically. Well, it was next to it, but the city has now grown and brought the reserve practically into the city, where we have great chances of photographing leopards. So we can add that game drive to the 11 we do at Ranthambore, and that's 12 game drives in total. As with all Photo Pro expeditions, which are now called photo expeditions, the purpose of these expeditions is to allow serious photographers. You could be a serious amateur or a professional photographer, or somebody who wants to take their photography to the next level and is serious about it. And these expeditions allow you extra time to get creative, to stay longer, to stay out longer, to watch things longer, to experiment more with your camera and photography. And all these expeditions are led by highly experienced photo expedition leaders who are qualified to not only guide and lead these expeditions, but also to add an element of teaching, which will help our guests improve their photography, get to know their gear better, and get to take their wildlife photography to the next level. Now, the expedition begins in Delhi, and as with all our expeditions that begin in Delhi, we start with a day of sightseeing in Delhi. The next day we drive to Jaipur, which is the capital city of a state called Rajasthan. And until last season, we used to fly to Jaipur and then drive from Jaipur to Ranthambore, but we have stopped doing that. Now there is a fantastic expressway that links Delhi to Jaipur, and Delhi to Ranthambore, in fact. And we are taking advantage of that and making our departure from Delhi much easier. We no longer have to wake up, 2 hours before sunrise and rush to the airport while it is still dark and, deal with grumpy airline staff, and then drive another 3 hours to Ranthambore. Now we can just drive straight to Jaipur or to Ranthambore from Delhi in just 5 hours of really comfortable driving. Then, of course, we stay at Ranthambore, and after we have finished our game drives and our safari there, we drive from Ranthambore to Agra, where we spend a day. We spend a night there, and we spend some more time photographing the Taj Mahal and the Agra Fort. And then from Agra, we drive back to Delhi, and then we fly home. Now, the expedition of April 18th this year is the one that I'm going to talk about today, and it's today's webinar is just a story of how that expedition went. I'll share pictures with you. I'll tell you what we saw and how we photographed things and what we experienced, and that will give you a really nice idea of what this expedition is like. And later, of course, we will talk about what kind of equipment you might want to bring with you if you join an expedition like this. The expedition of April 18th started with 5 guests. 3 were from the US and 1 couple were from Australia. And we had tremendous amounts of fun, both in and out of our safari jeeps. And it was fantastic. We had some excellent sightings, as you will find out, and it was overall a fantastic trip. On day 1, as I was mentioning earlier, we started with sightseeing around Delhi. We start by going to Old Delhi, which is literally medieval Delhi. It's a really old part of the city, has some beautiful monuments and some bustling bazaars, which are, straight out of a storybook on India. And we start by first going to Jama Masjid, which is the largest Friday mosque in India. And there we do some architectural photography. And from the Jama Masjid, you can see the Red Fort of Delhi. You get a vantage view of the Red Fort, so we get some great pictures of that, and also of the bustling bazaars around it. Then we take you into the bazaars in tricycle rickshaws, and we experience the organized chaos that is, literally any old city in India, or the old neighborhoods of any city in India. And medieval Delhi or Old Delhi is no different. Oxen still pull carts full of various wares, spices and flowers and things like that are sold in the bazaars. We walk through a spice market, and we also then later visit a Sikh temple or a Gurudwara. And then we come back into New Delhi, which was built in 1930 and is like any modern capital, a city of wide streets and beautiful avenues and some excellent colonial architecture from the period of the British Raj in India. After spending the day sightseeing around Delhi, we come back to our hotel, which is in the heart of the of New Delhi, and we rest for the afternoon, and then in the evening we have our welcome dinner, where we have a briefing about the trip, and then get ready for the next leg of our journey, which is to the city of Jaipur. Jaipur again is another medieval era city that has sort of stopped in time, or at least the old town part of it has stopped in time. And we go to Jaipur to photograph the beautiful old palaces and markets there. Uh, Jaipur, as I mentioned, was the capital of, it's still the capital of the state called Rajasthan. And before India became a republic and India became independent, Rajputana is what the state used to be called. And it had many erstwhile feudal states, kingdoms, all a state in themselves, and Jaipur was one of the largest such states. And the city has really rich heritage and culture. And going out early in the morning on a nice walk in old Jaipur is a really fun experience, and allows us lots of opportunities to get some creative street photos and people pictures, and of course pictures of the architecture. But we being Nat Hab, we do not miss any opportunity for wildlife, and we find wildlife even in the city. Now, just outside Jaipur is a patch of forest called Jhalana, which in recent years became quite popular because of the easy leopard sightings that a few wildlife photographers from the city started having there. And as it became more and more popular, the state decided that the area needed to be protected and established something called Jhalana Leopard Reserve. So it got greater protection, and tourism still continues, although it is far better organized and regulated now. And just in a 20-25 minute drive from our hotel in Jaipur, which also is, by the way, an old palace. So in just a 20 or 25 minute drive from our hotel, after high tea, we arrive at Jhalana and go on a game drive looking for leopards. Now, look at this picture. You can see a game drive jeep, and there you can see hills and forests in the background, and beyond them you can see skyscrapers and apartments and houses of the city there in the back. So that's true for a lot of parts of India. A lot of large cities in India still have a lot of wildlife in and around them, and leopards in particular are becoming increasingly common in and around India's urban centers, sort of reclaiming their old habitats. And that's quite interesting. And the dynamics between leopards and people is a story for another day. So we went to Jhalana as we had planned to go look for leopards. Unfortunately, we did not find any leopards. It was only one game drive that we could spare at Jhalana, but we did find some other extremely interesting creatures. Here is a desert fox, which is a very rare canid that is not usually easy to see. But the desert foxes in Jhalana are fairly confident around jeeps because they'd seen them so frequently. And this fox was quite a bit away from where our jeep was parked on the game drive track. But when we started taking pictures, the fox got really curious at the camera shutters going off and just trotted up to us, curiously looking at us and trying to figure out what the noise was. So that's how we got this fantastic, full frame picture of the fox. I was struggling to actually fit the fox into the frame. It was so close. This was what my Jeep saw, while our other Jeeps, who were also in game drive in the same park but in a different part of the park, found an even rarer creature, the striped hyena. Now, we do have hyenas across India. The striped hyena is very widespread, but it is an extremely rare animal to see. It is almost entirely nocturnal, very shy, and very rarely seen in daylight. But lucky for us, one of our jeeps got to have this fantastic sighting. So no complaints about not seeing a leopard because we saw rare stuff. The next morning, we did our city tour of Jaipur, and then after breakfast, we drove to our prime destination, Ranthambore Tiger Reserve and National Park. Ranthambore is arguably the most popular, the most famous tiger reserve in the world. It is known for its easy tiger sightings, and it is known for its excellent tiger photography opportunities. And as I was mentioning earlier, that is why it is the focus of our expedition on India Tiger Quest and India Tiger Photo Expedition. We had phenomenal sightings in Ranthambore. We saw multiple tigers. We saw a leopard, finally. We saw sloth bears. We saw plenty of other animals, lots of birds. Let's start with the tigers that we saw. Well, among the tigers that we saw in Ranthambore, we primarily saw three different tigresses with their cubs, and we had multiple sightings of them. And the most sightings that we had were of a tigress called Riddhi and her cubs. She's got three cubs. You see only two in this picture. The two that you see in this picture are males. There is also a female cub, but she has begun. I mean, the cubs are just, they just turned 1 year old 2 days ago. But the female cub has started being more independent. She has started spending more time by herself. Probably she doesn't like the boisterous company of her brothers. But I have a feeling that she started spending more time by herself because she has begun maturing quicker than her brothers. Same story everywhere. And she, in fact, spends less time playing and being silly with her siblings and more time, figuring out how to hunt. In fact, she's already made a few kills of her own, which is quite an achievement for a cub that age. Anyhow, we saw Riddhi and her cubs multiple times. This was from one of the fantastic sightings. Now, this cub appeared after making us wait for a very long time on a hot afternoon by a stream. We knew that the mother and cubs were cooling off in the stream out of sight. And when they finally appeared after it started to get less hot, around 4:30 or 5 o'clock, just one look at the cub and we knew that they really were seriously cooling off. They were rolling in mud and playing in water, and that's how they looked when they appeared. The two brothers and mother gave us quite a sighting. They spent a lot of time together. On one occasion, just one of our jeeps had them all to ourselves on top of a small sort of cliff top, and our other jeeps were below the cliff, shooting up at the cubs and the mother, getting a nice low perspective. In Ranthambore, the park is divided into 10 different zones, of which zones 1 through 5 and sometimes 6 and sometimes zone 10 are the ones that we usually go to. Zone 3 of the park is what we call quintessential Ranthambore. It's got a nice view of the fort that is, an ancient 1,000-year-old fort that is right in the center of the park, and after which the park has been named. There are many old medieval era hunting lodges of Maharajas that lie strewn all across the park, along with other old monuments like cenotaphs and even graves. Um, so that part of the park is really pretty and really straight out of a picture book, storybook. And it also has three major lakes. These are artificial lakes built back in the time of the king of Jaipur or Maharaja of Jaipur, who used this area in the past as his private hunting reserve. And the lakes serve as an oasis in the peak of summer. And a lot of wildlife gathers around the lakes. There's plenty of deer, plenty of sambar, plenty of spotted deer, peafowl, lots of birds. And what this does is it makes that area a fantastic tiger nursery. So for generation after generation, we've had very, very successful breeding tigresses occupying that area and successfully raising large litters of cubs to adulthood with very little competition from other tigers and no shortage of prey. And every tigress that has ever occupied this area in the last 30 years has been referred to as the Lady of the Lakes. The present Lady of the Lakes is Riddhi. And each Lady of the Lake has actually been from the same maternal lineage, um, going back to the first tigress who was referred to as Lady of the Lakes, a tigress called Machli, who used to be there in the 90s. You can find her as the star of many old documentaries and movies on tigers. So her great granddaughter, uh, or no, she's her great great granddaughter, is Riddhi, and she is the current Lady of the Lakes. The tigers in that area are also excellent in terms of the ease with which they're seen, because they get used to safari vehicles driving around and are quite confident and bold. And that area is also one of the few areas where one can have a serious chance of actually seeing a hunt occur. Um, Anyhow, Riddhi and her cubs entertained us no end. I mean, this was just a month ago, and I came back 2 days ago from an India Tiger Quest, and after seeing Riddhi and her cubs again, and it's amazing how quickly these cubs grow. They're like puppies, you know. In 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks time, they grow and look so different. Um, this here is one of the cubs, not snarling. This is just the fag end of a yawn. If he was actually snarling at us, his ears would be flattened. You know, this looks like a snarl, but it's actually the end of a yawn. Oops. That's Riddhi, or Her Highness, Lady of the Lakes. And those are the boys just being boys. Um, One afternoon, they really provided us with fantastic entertainment when the three of them appeared out on an open grassy meadow. And one of the cubs, you know, the one that's crouching in this picture, decided to try his hunting skills with a lot of confidence. There was a really large herd of over 100 spotted deer uh, outside this frame to our right and about 200, 300 yards away. And the cub decided to stalk them and hunt them while his mother and brother watched with amusement. He went, you know, in full flight, and the end result was that in no time, there wasn't a single deer left in the meadows. All of them scattered and vanished. although the cub still was quite impressed by his own ability to strike fear in the heart of deer. So he stood on that dead tree there, very proud of himself, and gave us some nice photographs. The day after that, we also saw in another part, in zone 2 of the park, the former Lady of the Lakes. This is Riddhi's mother. So this is Arrowhead. And Arrowhead is a tigress who is, I'm particularly fond of. When I started guiding for Nat Hab back in 2016, Arrowhead was a young tigress, not yet fully an adult. She was just in that age when they start going their own way away from their mother, and she held a lot of promise. Of course, she had she gave birth to a lot of cubs and held her sway over the lakes area front more as the Lady of the Lakes. But now, at the age of about 10, she's more than 10, she's not been keeping very well. In fact, she had a tumor appear on her abdomen, and that greatly weakened her, which caused her to be driven out of the lakes area by her own daughter Riddhi, and her Arrowhead's territory began to narrow into a very small area in zone 2 of the park. The tumor appeared at a time when she already had cubs. She also has 3 cubs at the moment. You can see one of the cubs in the top left corner of this picture. Because she had cubs, the park management decided to intervene and operate on her. They had the tumor removed, and that brought her, some strength back. She began to hunt again, but she still could not hunt well enough to provide for cubs. So, this being a rarest of rare case, the park management also provided some supplementary feeding by, giving her dead animals and even dressed meat every now and then, so that she can provide for her cubs and that the cubs do not starve. But Arrowhead's territory has now narrowed to a very small area. And while it was nice to see her recovering from her illness and to see that her cubs are doing fine, it is still sad for me personally to see a tigress, like Arrowhead, who at one point of time was such a queen and such an empress of her territory, to have been reduced to such a shadow of her former self. Um, One of our jeeps also saw another tigress in zone 1 of the park called, she's called Sultana. Sultana also has 3 cubs, and we did see them, but I could not. The cubs were not in a great position to get pictures of. But here is Sultana walking in a drizzle. And as I was mentioning, one morning in zone 2, one of our jeeps got to see a leopard. Leopard, panther, they're all the same. Leopards are notoriously elusive big cats, and especially in areas where there are larger big cats like tigers or lions, leopards tend to keep a very low profile, and they become extra shy and extra elusive and are therefore very difficult to see. In Jhalana, which is next to Jaipur and which I was talking about earlier, the leopard is the biggest cat. That is why they're easy to see there. They have no other bigger predator to fear. So in places like Jhalana or Yala National Park in Sri Lanka, where we also have expeditions to, in these places, leopards are the top cat, and therefore leopards in these areas tend to be bold and fairly easy to see. But leopards in places like Ranthambore or anywhere else in tiger country tend to be very, very shy. But one of our jeeps got to have this fantastic sighting of this leopard, a beautiful leopardess, in fact, one early morning. And they managed to have a great sighting just because they were there by themselves. Soon, other jeeps arrived and the leopardess started going inside cover. And, the others who followed did not have as good a sighting as our jeep did. We also had this, sad story. Well, there's action around every corner in the jungle, and the rules of nature are rather ruthless. But one of our jeeps managed to sight this sambar deer. They were parked next to a water body, and they saw the sambar going into the water and drinking, oblivious of the fact that there was a big crocodile, a marsh crocodile, eyeing the sambar. Then the crocodile got hold of the sambar, but fortunately for the sambar, it managed to pull itself out of the water, although it lost a lot of blood in the process. We were having tough luck with sloth bears, but finally, when we were just about to give up, a couple of our jeeps had an excellent sighting of the sloth bear. On later trips in Ranthambore, both the trips that I've led after this photography expedition in the past month, we have had some really good sloth bear sightings. Lots of sloth bear sightings, in fact, especially mothers and cubs. Now, we were, one day we just decided to break the routine of morning and afternoon game drives. We had seen plenty of tigers and plenty of other wildlife in Ranthambore. So I offered to our group to do something different, and we chose to not go on a game drive one afternoon and go instead to the National Chambal Wildlife Sanctuary, which is a river wildlife sanctuary just an hour's drive from Ranthambore. The Chambal River is one of the tributaries to the Ganges and Yamuna river system. It is well known as one of India's cleanest peninsular rivers. Chambal, besides being one of our cleanest rivers, is also home to two crocodilian species: the marsh crocodile or mugger, which we saw earlier, attacking the deer, as well as the critically endangered gharial, which is an ancient genus of crocodile, which has a very narrow snout that is adapted purely to fish eating. Gharials are very sensitive to water quality and other environmental factors. And the largest population of gharials, breeding gharials, lives in the Chambal River. The Chambal is also an excellent place for birds. But of course, this being summer, we saw far fewer birds than we would have in winter when we have migrating waterfowl coming. The Chambal also is home to the Gangetic river dolphin, which a lot of you might have heard me talking about on webinars on our Grand India Wildlife Adventure, where we also see the dolphin in the Brahmaputra River. But our luck wasn't so great. We did not see any gharial, and we did not see the Gangetic dolphin. But we had this massive, almost 14, 15 foot long mugger crocodile or marsh crocodile. And while I only managed to get him basking like that, one of our guests managed to get him, splashing into the water. And I think that's a really, really good picture. This beautiful golden backlight and a fast shutter speed has captured the action really well. The water splashing, the crocs jaw open, and with tack sharp focus on the eye of the crocodile. Um, we also saw whatever birds there were to see. There were, which is not to say there weren't enough birds to see. There were quite a few birds still, despite this being summer. Here are a pair of coom duck, and there's one ruddy shell duck which did not go back after migrating here in the winter. It did not go back to its breeding grounds in Central Asia. Some winter migrant birds, because of illness or injury or various other factors, do tend to stay through the hot season in what is supposed to be their wintering grounds. That is absolutely normal. We got to see some beautiful resident birds like this purple swamphen here. And one of the interesting things about summer is that you also get to see a lot of bird breeding activities. So be it chicks or be it courtship, you get to see a lot of that. We also saw from our boat, since we were on a boat safari, we saw animals like these blue bull. This is a female blue bull, which is Asia's largest antelope, and a really good-looking antelope at that. Being in a boat allowed us to have a beautiful below eye level perspective and get some really nice pictures with the nice golden light of the setting sun. Here is a male blue bull, which is actually blue in color, slaty blue in color. The female, if you notice, is brown, and the male has horns while the female doesn't. Besides, the birding that we did in the Chambal River, we also had some very nice birding, some really pretty birds, some really nice photogenic birds in Ranthambore as well. Here is a rose-ringed parakeet feeding on the flowers of a flame of the forest tree. Flame of the forest is a tree whose Latin name is Butea monosperma, which sheds its leaves in the summer and bursts into these beautiful orange-red, flowers that look like, flames of fire. And you will find entire patches of forest just bursting red with flame of the forest trees. And, that in itself is so beautiful. But especially when you find an animal or a bird in those flowers, it becomes, an even better photograph. Here is a lesser goldenback woodpecker on a cluster fig tree. You can photograph birds on many trees, but when there are beautiful flowers or beautiful fruit and something to add to the aesthetic value of the picture, that's always welcome. Speaking of the cluster fig tree, the tree itself can also make for a great subject. We don't always have to photograph animals and birds. Sometimes plants also make great photography subjects. The cluster fig tree, as the name implies, fruits its figs in clusters. The figs, while these pictures were taken, were still unripe and green. As they ripen, they'll turn red, and that will make them look even better. This tree belongs to the ficus family. It's called Ficus racemosa. Among other birds, some really nice pictures of painted spurfowl. This is a male painted spurfowl. And here's a beautiful yellow-footed green pigeon with her chick. And here are a pair of little ringed plovers engaging in some courtship display. While we wait for tigers to wake up from their afternoon slumber, which, their cats, they sleep for hours and hours and hours. And while we wait for them to wake up and show up, we should always keep an eye out for all the other action that's happening around us. This was taken in one such occasion. And here is our national bird, the Indian peacock. And thanks to the amount of time that we could have on this extended itinerary, we could slow down, stop, and wait for moments like this where you get peacocks in flight and experiment with shutter speeds and apertures. And that's the beauty of a photo pro or photo expedition. It gives you time to do all of that. And then we finished in style. We went to the Taj Mahal in Agra, where all the other tourists appeared dressed in fancy clothes for their beautiful photo shoots in front of this extremely beautiful monument. But we ended up there absolutely in style, dressed in our safari gear, and unapologetically so. So that ended our expedition. Now, on the photo expedition, we uh, take take out extra time to have an element of education and learning wherever the opportunity arises or wherever our guests require. And we have such sessions as, Lightroom editing sessions or other workflow sessions. And we don't waste any time. We utilize our time in our van, driving from place to place, in sitting and going through our pictures, processing them, and just learning from each other. So here are what I would recommend in terms of gear for a photo expedition to India. I would recommend at least two camera bodies. These could be DSLRs or mirrorless camera bodies, depending on whatever you're shooting with. Ideally, they should be bodies that are capable of some sharp, fast frames per second. So you should be able to shoot a lot of pictures per second in order to capture action. And these should be bodies that should have decent low light, image quality, because with wildlife, low light ability is always a plus. I would recommend two telephoto lenses, one short telephoto lens for when the cats are close, when large mammals are close to us, and one long telephoto lens, which you can use for distant subjects and for birds. Also, you might want to carry a wide angle lens for landscape photography, the opportunities for which are endless. And you would also ideally want to have a standard lens like a 35 or a 50 or a 24 to 105 zoom or something in that range that you might want to use for street photography, people, portraits, things like that. I would not recommend that you carry a tripod on these trips. A tripod is of very little use on a safari jeep. We do provide our guests with bean bags, which I find are perfect for long telephoto work. But you might want to carry a monopod if you're keen, if you think it'll help you. Um, if you take your landscape photography seriously, do carry polarizer filters and neutral density filters. Um, Also, plenty of spare batteries and memory cards because we tend to shoot a lot on these trips on game drives. Do not bother carrying a flash unless you want to use it for creative photography with people and streets and you know in photo opportunities outside of national parks and wildlife reserves, because within national parks and wildlife reserves, around wildlife, you're not allowed to use a flash gun in India. So that's it. I would love to hear what questions you have for me. So over to you, Rob.
All right, thank you so much, Aditya. Now, before we start in with the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit some questions via the question field in your control panel. All right, let's get to some of these questions. So, how large of a territory does a tiger need or patrol or have?
Well, that's a good question. But the answer to that is that the size of a tiger's territory is entirely dependent on how much prey there is in the area. It is inversely proportional. The more prey that is available in an area, the smaller a tiger territory needs to be. So in a good tiger reserve, where prey density is good, you can have about 5 or 6 tigers per 100 square kilometers. In some habitats where prey density is excellent, it is phenomenally good. Places like Kaziranga, places like Bandhavgarh, places like Corbett Tiger Reserve. There you can have 10, 15, sometimes even 20 tigers per 100 square kilometers, which is an ultra high density of tigers. But on average, you would say 5 to 6 tigers, 5 to 8 tigers maybe per 100 square kilometers. Ranthambore National Park and Tiger Reserve is 1700 square kilometers large and is home to about 80 tigers. So that's a fair density of tigers. It's higher than average.
Great, thank you. So, how do the baby tigers know when to leave their mother and go off on their own forever?
It's very much like with us humans, Rob. As they grow up, as they become more and more capable of doing their own thing, as they start to have independent thoughts of their own, as their um, as their dependence on their mother reduces, they begin to get more and more aloof. They begin to get more and more possessive of their things. They start fighting with their siblings. They start to become a burden on the mother. The mother also starts to push them away. She will start not sharing kills. She will start chasing them away after one point of time, and eventually they must find their own way around life.
Great, thank you. So, here's a hypothetical. If a tiger is attacked by a crocodile, who has the best chance of survival? And does this happen often?
It doesn't happen very often, but at least I have seen it happen once. And I've actually also I've shown the pictures and told the story on at least a couple of my webinars in the past. Um, Arrowhead last year uh, decided to mess around with the crocodile. She saw the croc, stopped, the croc was in the water. She stalked towards it. She raced into the water. And while we were watching, she went for the croc. And we hadn't seen the croc. We thought she was going after a turtle, maybe, because she had started killing turtles, large flapshell turtles, which are, have a lot of meat and are easy to kill. So we see Arrowhead racing into the water, charging into it. And then she suddenly went under. She went underwater, and for a good 10 seconds, we saw nothing. And then, 10 or 15 seconds later, she, literally exploded out of the water and scrambled back to land for her life. And as she did that, we saw 3 or 4 massive crocs chasing her. And she narrowly made it to land, and she had a bad gash in her throat. The one of the crocs, at least one of the crocs, had actually caught hold of her neck and pulled her underwater, while 3 or 4 others closed in. And it was the rarest of the rare sort of sighting. And I think from what I saw, she was pretty close to being killed, but fortunately she survived. So, answer to the question is it entirely depends on the size of the croc and the number of the crocs.
Wow, what an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So let's talk about the Jeeps for a second. The Jeeps don't have roofs, so what happens if it rains? And also, is this dangerous as far as being protected from tigers and other wild animals?
It's not dangerous. Animals don't see jeeps as having humans. Animals see the jeep as a whole, which is why animals will be very, very comfortable in the presence of jeeps. But the moment they see a person walking on foot or riding a motorcycle or riding a bicycle, they just vanish. We have seen this happen so many times while out on safari. Tigers do not see humans as prey as a rule. They are scared of humans. There is a deep genetic memory, hardwired into tiger DNA, because our great ancestors onwards, we have always been hunting megafauna. So, like with most animals, tigers also do their very best to avoid people. But tigers do not see jeeps as people. They have learned to see them as just another large animal that sticks to the road, never chases anyone, never harms anyone. So they have become comfortable with jeeps. So they do not see people inside the jeep. They see the jeep as a whole. And even when they do see people on foot, in most cases, except in the rarest of rare aberrant cases, a tiger will actually avoid being seen by the human being. It'll hide, it'll wait for the human to pass, and then it'll go. And as far as rain is concerned, we do recommend that our guests carry rain jackets with them on game drives, because even in the hottest of summers, there might be unexpected rains at any point of time. We also, in addition, carry umbrellas and ponchos in the jeeps. So what we do when it rains is, depending on the mood of our guests, because some of them do not want to go back to camp, they want to drive in the rain and enjoy the cooling, wet fun. We either just cover up with ponchos and continue the drive, or if it is dangerous, say there is lightning and there is thunder and winds, then we just find the nearest cover and take shelter.
Great. That's all great information to know. Thank you so much. So you say there are only 2 people per jeep in these photo expeditions. So is it possible that we'll go out together in a group and I'll get a shot in one jeep and you'll miss it in another jeep?
Oh yes, that's absolutely possible, because it's the jungle. You know, the likelihood that our jeeps might be each in a different zone is pretty high. Our zones are pre-assigned. So sometimes we have all the jeeps in the same zones. Sometimes we have our jeeps in different zones, and each jeep does its own thing, Rob. Even if we do happen to be in the same zone, we do not stick together. Our jeeps are crewed by excellent drivers and excellent trackers, and the expedition leader rotates from jeep to jeep through the drives. And we do not limit the expertise and ability of our trackers and drivers. We let them do their own thing. They're the experts, they know best, and they play their best game. So each does their own thing, and based on their understanding of wildlife, their understanding of what's going on in the park, their understanding of what's happening that very morning or afternoon, they will play their best game. But of course, if we are in the same zones, the likelihood of being at the same sighting is very, very high, because everybody tends to know where the chances are best. But then there is also always the likelihood that a jeep driving around by itself might find something of its own that nobody else might see. So the whole idea, Rob, is that it is not a competition. It is not it's not a conducted tour. It's it's going out there into the wilderness and tracking, soaking in, and seeing what Mother Nature throws at us.
Wow, that sounds great. Thank you for that. So if I only own one full frame mirrorless with multiple lenses, should I get another one? Should I rent it or buy something? Is that something? Am I really going to need 2 on the trip?
Well, it's always more convenient if you have a backup body, uh, because under circumstances you might have to change lenses. Um, when on game drives, it is often dusty. I try and avoid changing lenses while it is dirty and dusty. Although I've always believed as a photographer that my cameras and lenses, expensive as they are tools, not jewels. So, but having said that, I would still want my equipment to last. So I put different lenses on two bodies so that when I need to have a different focal length, I can quickly switch between cameras. And also, changing lenses takes time. So you are losing precious photographic opportunities while you're doing that. So I would highly recommend that we have a backup body. Having a backup body also saves the trip for us in the rare case that something goes wrong with their camera. Then at least you have a second camera with which you can continue shooting and not have to just give up photography on the trip.
Would a crop body suffice?
Oh, absolutely. I must admit that I shoot with crop bodies. I do not yet have full frame camera, although I do aspire to do that once I switch to mirrorless. I'm still shooting with DSLRs, and my DSLRs are still crop frame bodies. I shoot. My main camera is a D500, which is a really fast action camera, and it is a crop body.
Great, thank you. So, is it easy to distinguish a Bengal tiger from other types of tigers?
Well, it depends. If of course, if you see them in the habitat, then you can tell which is what. But if you see them in a zoo, it might not be so easy. But you can tell the Sumatran tiger apart because it is much smaller and has a very distinct appearance with, much lesser white on its face, much larger mane, and slightly different shape of muzzle. And but if it comes to Bengal tigers and say Siberian tigers, then if you see them in a zoo, unless there is a sign mentioning it, you might find it very difficult to tell.
Great. Thank you, Aditya. Unfortunately, that will be the last question that we do have time for today. So I'd like to hand it back to you for your closing comments.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you to our wonderful audience. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar and are all excited and wanting to be in Ranthambore photographing tigers now. I look forward to seeing you all again. Once I'm done wrapping up the season, then I'll have more time for lots of webinars. So see you all soon.
Aditya, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. If you're interested in information on how you can travel with Nat Hab, please give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us Monday for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out next week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.